Good morning. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier is located on Western Abenaki land, which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier honors, recognizes, and respects these peoples as the traditional and ongoing stewards of the lands and waters on which we gather. In that same spirit, we will respect, protect, and be good stewards of this land for as long as we walk upon it. I am Ginny Sassaman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your worship associate this morning. Hopefully, everyone is well rested thanks to that extra hour of sleep we were all gifted last night by the return of standard time. Maybe you even tuned in a little early and have been wondering where we were. In any case, thank you so much for joining us in this time of worship, wherever you are, whether you are on Zoom, on Facebook, or watching the service on your own time. We deeply appreciate your presence and fellowship. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier is a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1864. We are a religious community that welcomes all as we journey together, seeking spiritual wholeness and justice in this world that we live in. Whether you are a newcomer, a longtime member, or somewhere in between, you are part of our community, and we are glad that you are here. If you are joining us on Zoom, the chat function will be on for much of the service. It is a great way to publicly welcome and support one another, to affirm the hard work and effort of our worship team, and to share good vibes and positive thoughts with each other. For technical issues or constructive thoughts, please private message one of our Zoom hosts indicated with an asterisk by their name, or join us for coffee hour after the service to share your thoughts then. Thank you to our virtual greeters who are offering hospitality and tech throughout the service. Additionally, on Zoom, click on the live transcript button wherever it appears on your screen for increased accessibility. I now invite you to take a deep, slow breath and enter more fully into our time of worship with the Prelude.
Good morning. I am the Reverend Joan Javier-Duval. I use she, her pronouns. Our opening words are by Andrew C. Kennedy. We come to love a church, the traditions, the history, and especially the people associated with it. And through these people, young and old, known and unknown, we reach out, both backward into history and forward into the future, to link together the generations in this imperfect but blessed community of memory and hope.
Our opening hymn, How Can I Keep From Singing, which we know in our hymnal as My Life Flows On, an Endless Song, was written by the Baptist minister Robert Lowry to a text that first appeared in 1868. Now people consider that text to have been anonymous, but it was attributed then to Pauline T. The hymn was first published in 1869, only a couple of years after our church was built. Please join our ministerial intern, Vertus LeVar Robinson, in singing the original version as it might have been sung in this church in the 1800s. The introduction is by fiddler Susan Reid.
Since Christ the Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? I lift my
Let us now light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The chalice that we light in the sanctuary each Sunday was given to the church by Reverend Robert C. Waterston of Boston in 1866. I invite you to light a chalice at home if you have one nearby. We light this flame, an enduring symbol of our collective commitment to lead with truth and compassion. And now please join me in saying these words of affirmation adapted from Universalist minister L. Griswold Williams. Reverend Griswold wrote these words in 1933 while he was serving as minister of the First Universalist Church of Barrie. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant. Our generosity is a form of love and gratitude. Our gifts freely given help us to practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation. Each month, through the UCM Community Pouch program, we share a part of our collection with an important church fund or a community organization aligned with our values. November is a month which for many of us features the biggest feast day of the year. So it seems especially appropriate that the community pouch recipient for November is the local food shelf, Just Basics in Montpelier. Just Basics is the parent organization of the Montpelier Food Pantry. Just Basics works with members of the greater Montpelier area to address their basic needs and confront cycles of injustice. They serve the communities of Montpelier, East Montpelier, Chalice, Middlesex, Berlin, Worcester, and Adamant. They provide food pickup 3 times a week. During this pandemic time, they are no longer receiving the usual plentiful supply of food and personal care items donations. Your donations are so very welcome. The local food shelf was the choice of the Community Lunch Advisory Committee. Your contribution to the UCM Community Pouch this month will directly support the work of Just Basics. You can make a financial contribution today by donating online. Go to ucmvt.org and click Donate to UCM. There are options to contribute to the general fund, which supports the general operating budget of the church, the community pouch, or both. You can also mail a check to the church, or you can use our text to give option. Simply send a text with the word give to 802-266-4848 and follow the instructions sent to you. We are so very grateful to each and every one of you for your generosity in its many forms. For our musical offering, enjoy a pair of songs popular in the 1860s, around the time our church was built, performed by local musicians Susan Reid and Pam Bockes.
We set aside time now to share with one another those joys and concerns that we bring with us into this time of worship. You may be celebrating something special in your life that you would like to share with all of us so we can celebrate with you. Or perhaps you are experiencing a challenge or a loss that you'd like to share so that we can offer our love and support. Denise Bailey, our lay pastoral caregiver, is available this morning to lend a listening ear of care after the service. Denise will be sharing her phone number in the Zoom chat. I invite you to take a breath and to join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, mysterious source of all that is and ever was, we join our hearts in a time of prayer, attuning ourselves to all that is present within each of us and among this gathered community. In this season of change and transition, the earth shows us that nothing is permanent, that green fades to brown, and that the chill of night brings frost where there was once dew. So too in our lives, we find that joy can turn to sorrow and turmoil to peace. All life is change. With these ups and downs, we pray for ease. We pray for resilience. We pray for the wisdom to take in the long view backwards and forwards in time. We pray for the courage to reach beyond our isolation, to reach for one another, and for the universal and abiding source of love. May each of us feel held in this love and held in the legacy of those who have come before. May we know that we have companionship through the ups and downs, trusting that surrounded by love, we will endure one breath, one moment, one day at a time. Let us now join in a brief time of quiet meditation, after which we will sing together, Spirit of Life. Our reading this morning is from a sermon entitled After the Flood, a Sermon in Time of Disaster by the Reverend William Stanley Nichols, who served the Church of the Messiah, now the Unitarian Church of Montpelier, from 1920 to 1933. He preached this sermon after the Great Flood of 1927 to a joint meeting of Protestant churches in Montpelier. Here is a photo of Reverend Nichols, and these are his words. We have certainly had it brought home to us very closely in these days that it is the spiritual values which are indestructible and enduring. The prompt lending of hands, the opening of homes, the willing offering of volunteer work, the cheerful greetings, the sympathetic inquiries, the outpouring of gifts near and far, the speedy function of the Red Cross, all these are the fruitings of the spiritual tree nurtured in the bygone days and now blessing us in this hour of our need. because we have been spiritual seekers and have in some measure at least followed the spiritual leadership of Jesus, because we have cultivated in our hearts and minds the great ideals of brotherhood among humans and kinship with the divine, because we are, in short, of a certain manner of men and women, we have a great foundation, an unyielding rock upon which we can build and build again without the slightest danger of destruction. When I say reestablish your churches, I am thinking not merely of the temple made with hands. I am referring much more to the deep spiritual structure which depends upon the loyalty and devotion of your hearts and minds. Be not indifferent worshipers, half-hearted supporters, lukewarm believers, but devote yourselves to the real spiritual culture offered by your church, and great will be your reward. If in the next decade, while the city may be slowly and painfully coming back to its former proud place of beauty and prosperity, you can correspondingly increase in your spiritual life, then wonderful will be our victory over material disaster. Glorious will be our achievements, and whole future generations will benefit and point back to these days as heroic times. Dear Reverend Nichols, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Joan Javier-Duval. I was called to serve as the settled minister of the Unitarian Church of Montpelier in May of 2015 and began my ministry that August. The name Unitarian Church of Montpelier may be both familiar and unfamiliar to you at the same time. The Church of the Messiah, which you served from 1920 to 1933, voted to change its name in 1979, though it had been popularly called the Unitarian Church. Reverend Nichols, it has been 609 days since we last held a worship service in the sanctuary with the congregation present. I do not wish to explain the details of the pandemic which has caused us to remain effectively in exile from our beloved sanctuary. Let me just say that a virus with potentially fatal ends has been working its way through the human population across the globe. I know you lived through a flu pandemic just before beginning your ministry with the Church of the Messiah, so you have some sense of what we are living through in this moment. While we have made some progress with immunization, we will likely never be rid of this virus, and how we will live with these uncertain circumstances is still unfolding. You would be pleased to know that this is a vibrant and thriving congregation, and Montpelier as a whole is a vibrant and thriving community. The church also draws people in from across the region, and now that we are conducting our services and other programs on something called the internet, people are able to be a part of the church community who live quite a distance away. As an aside, I would like to explain to you what the internet is, but I fear this would take several more pages of explanation. If you could, just imagine that in the future, there will be a way for people to see and hear one another in real time who are not in the same room. Human ingenuity has led to some profound changes since your time. You will also be pleased to know that the church building has been maintained and attended to with great care over the years. The building at 130 Main Street would, for the most part, look familiar to you. There have been some cosmetic changes to the interior, and there was an addition built in the 1980s for the growing staff and religious education program. Through all the physical changes, the building has fostered a spirit of communion among the people of the church and greater community through the interactions, exchange of ideas, and demonstrations of love held within. In my short time as minister of this church, I have experienced the joy of watching the congregation dedicate themselves to the nurture and care of our children. I have experienced the heartache of lighting candles for those we have lost. I have experienced the delight of dancing together in the vestry, which I know you'd prefer we call the social room. This building has not only meant the world to those who choose to be members of the congregation, but also to those in our broader community who have been drawn here by world-class music so resonantly played inside these walls, by hospitality to those with shared values seeking justice, by a spirit of service that tends to human need with love and care. For so many reasons, this prolonged absence has been heartbreaking. I miss standing on the front steps before service on Sunday mornings and greeting people as they enter. I miss watching the faces in the congregation light up with a smile and a laugh when a joke is made at the pulpit. I miss watching someone's eyes close and their face relax in a shared moment of silence. I miss seeing someone reach for a tissue to dab their eyes when overcome by tears of sadness, grief, or recognition. I miss how this physical space supports the intangible but deep sense of connection and meaning that comes from being in the presence of others who seek to live full lives with open hearts. I was especially interested in writing to you, Reverend Nichols, because of the consequential events of November 1927 that greatly impacted the church and your ministry. I am, of course, speaking of the Great Flood. I understand that you were away during the flood, and your words about the devastation are striking. You wrote, "I left a beautiful city with clean streets, houses well kept, and a proud, generous people. I returned to a devastated city with streets deep in mud, buildings torn and wrecked, and the people toiling, dirty, and sad. I can only imagine the shock you felt when you arrived to the church building. I have come to learn that the building was severely damaged, a collapsed wall on the first floor, furniture soaked and ruined, the vestry left uninhabitable. The building, as I understand, could not be used for services or programs for several weeks while repairs were made. You found temporary refuge at Trinity Methodist Church across Main Street for your services, and the children of the Sunday school joined with those of other churches while they were unable to meet in our building. I can imagine the sorrow you all felt at having to carry on the life of the church outside of the church walls. This building that had been standing proudly since 1865 and that had already seen its share of upkeep and repairs, like when it was raised 16 inches in 1906 and practically fully renovated from foundation to steeple. I was moved to read your communication with George G. Davis, Secretary of the American Unitarian Association, who reached out to you days after the flood to offer the support of the association. An appeal went out and the church received a great amount of relief funds from congregations across the country. From reading your annual report for the meeting held in February of 1928, I gather that you were reluctant at first to accept help, and that the estimated losses that were shared were low in comparison to the real figures. You describe speaking for a self-reliant and independent people in your correspondence with the association. I can tell you that the people of the church remain quite self-reliant and independent, and asking for and receiving help is still a challenging spiritual practice. In the end, it seems the congregation was quite grateful to receive the support of many generous people in rebuilding the church and also in assisting the 70 or so families who suffered losses due to the flood. Dorman B.E. Kent, clerk of the church, wrote these words to George G. Davis after that annual meeting. Benefits sometimes also follow catastrophes. Without the financial assistance freely given by Unitarians throughout the land, our recovery from the havoc brought by the flood, which swept this valley in November 1927, would have been slow indeed. We have all along known that we have friends everywhere, but how good they could be to us, we did not suspect. This affair has bound us strongly to all the other churches of our faith, and what was done for us by you, by the other officers of the American Unitarian Association, and by an army of generous contributors will never be forgotten, so long as any now here shall survive. What a wonderful feeling of connection and interdependence you must have all felt in the days and weeks following such catastrophe. You were able to return to worship in the sanctuary on Christmas Eve of 1927 after the period of rebuilding and repair. From the Christmas Eve services that I have led in this very sanctuary, I can assume that it was quite the joyous occasion when you were finally able to gather once again inside this sacred space. How I long to know when we too will be able to open our doors once again and fill up the pews of our sanctuary with eager worshipers. The difficult truth is that we don't yet know when this will be possible. And when we do reopen, the experience will be quite different from 609 days ago. One reason for the uncertainty is a major undertaking to install a system that will exchange used air for fresh air, making the air we breathe while we are inside the building healthier and safer than it would otherwise be. This kind of project takes time, and the current pandemic means that we are also dealing with all kinds of factors that can cause delays. As a minister, I am sure you can relate to the feeling of wanting to have better news to share with the people you serve, of wanting to bring assurance in a time of great uncertainty. Yet, I also do not believe in making false promises, and I am learning the great spiritual value in accompanying people through the unknown. We miss being together in this building that you and many before you and after you so diligently cared for and maintained as a place of gathering. Yet over the past 21 months of this pandemic, I have also witnessed the ways connection can be made and relationships can be cultivated while we are apart. There's a song written by two Methodist ministers with a line that goes, "The church is not a building, the church is not a steeple, the church is not a resting place, the church is the people." It's a catchy tune that speaks to our identity and our sense of self as a religious and spiritual community. The church building alone does not make us who we are, as important as it can be to fostering the feelings and values that shape our purpose. The sentiment reminds me of the words that you shared in your sermon after the flood. In that sermon, you encouraged people to reestablish their churches by building upon the spiritual structure of their hearts and minds. The rebuilding of a house of worship was certainly at the forefront of the effort to recover after the disaster, yet you encouraged people to look within themselves for the upbuilding of the spirit that would bring a sustained sense of recovery and prosperity after tremendous loss. I know that when we are finally able to return to this building and its sanctuary, we will be a changed people in many ways. We will recover the meaning held and shared within these walls, and we will also create new meaning with all we have endured and learned over our time away from this space and the physical presence of one another. Reverend Nichols, my foray into our church records has given me a sense of the richly meaningful history that holds this present day community now. It brings me solace to know that others before us have endured their own trials and come out of them stronger and wiser. Indeed, the care of this building and this community that you and those before you and those after you have demonstrated has made it possible for us to be the church we are today. I do not know if you pray much, but I ask that you hold us in your prayers in our time of waiting. Pray for our patience. Pray for our sustained care for one another and our broader community. Pray for our openness to what is yet to unfold in the days to come. With the spirit of shared faith, Reverend Joan Javier-Duval.
Our closing hymn is the African American spiritual, "We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder." As a song originating in a repressed culture, we don't know its origins. According to the book, Between the Lines, Sources for Singing the Living Tradition, many believe it emerged as early as 1750 and was composed as a call and response song by American slaves taken from the area now known as Liberia. It was one of the first African American spirituals adopted by predominantly white churches, and so may well have been sung in our building 150 years ago. It's also impossible to know the original lyrics, and the various versions include probably hundreds of different verses. But nearly all of the earlier versions include the repeating phrase, "Soldiers of the Cross," instead of "We are climbing on," as we are used to singing in our hymn book. We know that these words, as with some of the words in our opening hymn, likely do not resonate with most members of our congregation. However, we sing them today out of deference to the lives and struggles of the generations of people for whom it may have been immensely meaningful. Please join the UCM choir in singing "We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder," led in the call and response by Heather Maas.
As we draw our service to a close, we extinguish the chalice and carry within each of us its healing flame, the warmth of community, and the spark of hope into the days and the week ahead. I invite you to join me in saying our congregational mission statement. We welcome all as we build a loving community to nurture each person's spiritual journey, serve human need, and protect the earth, our home. Our closing words are by the Reverend Peter Spilman Raible. We build on foundations we did not lay. We warm ourselves by fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We profit from persons we did not know. We are ever bound in community. May it always be so. This is as it should be. Together, we are more than any one person could be. Together, we can build across the generations. Together, we can renew our hope and faith in the life that is yet to unfold. Together, we can heed the call to a ministry of care and justice. We are ever bound in community. May it always be so. And we conclude our service with the Postlude, played by a man of many talents, tech team member and fiddler, Kenrick Kite.